The Charlotte Hornets, one of the worst NBA team franchises ever. Have never won a ring, have never even gone to the conference finals, let alone the finals. So I think it's fair to say that they've been lacking winning. But is that going to change this season? So for the past 7 seasons, the Charlotte Hornets have not made the playoffs. And the last time they did was the 2015-2016 season when they lost in the first round. Now, through those seasons, they've gone through 3 different coaching transitions, but only 2 coaches. So they had Steve Clifford through 2016 through 2018. And then they switched to James Borrego, who had his stint, didn't make the playoffs. And then Steve Clifford came back. And last year was his first year back with the Charlotte Hornets. And they had one of their worst seasons. Not as bad as their 2011-2012 season where they went 7-59. But they went 27-55. So not great. Now, if you want to know how bad the Hornets were last year, let me go over some team stats for you. So they finished 27-55, 14th in the Eastern Conference. They were 27th in points per game. They were 22nd in opponents' points per game. They had the worst offensive rating in the whole NBA, and they had the 20th defensive rating in the NBA, with the net being 27th out of 30th. And they were the 3rd worst team in the whole NBA. So they were just not good at all, which is why they got the 2nd overall pick this year. The Charlotte Hornets have been rebuilding for some time. I don't think that's a secret. A couple years ago, they get Lamelo Ball. They get PJ Washington. They just draft Brandon Miller. So they've been drafting. They've been drafting some good, solid players. They had Mark Williams last year as well. They have a lot of young talent on their team. But when is that going to start translating to winning? In my opinion, luckily, Hornets fans, I think that the Hornets are going to start being competitive again. I think the rebuild is close to over. It's not over. They're not a championship team. But they have their core talent, I feel like, and their core team for the future and what they want to build around. But first, let's go over last year just to see what went wrong. Why were the Hornets so bad last year? And it's simple. It's health. Lamelo didn't even play half the season. Kelly Oubre barely played half the season. Gordon Hayward had his fair shares of not playing any games. Mark Williams had a thumb injury. He just went through surgery. He's supposed to be back all good for next year, so that's a plus because Mark Williams could be a solid player. He'll probably be averaging, I would say, a double-double next year for sure. His rookie year, he averages 9 and 7, and he's probably going to get a much bigger role next year. Only one guy on their team played over 70 games. That was PJ Washington. So even if we go by last year's record and their roster and all those things, I think if everyone's healthy on that team, they're not one of the worst teams in the NBA. LaMelo Ball can change your franchise. He's already been an all-star. We know what he can do. He'll probably average a triple-double in his career at some point. Because last year, when he only played 36 games, he was averaging 23, 8, and 6. Those are all-star level numbers. He's fantastic. Terry Rozier, he also averaged over 20. Kelly Oubre, when he wasn't injured, was also averaging over 20. They had a lot of guys in the teens. You had PJ Washington averaging almost 16. Gordon Hayward was almost averaging 15. Jalen McDaniels was having a great year. So they have the talent. They have the player. They have the scoring ability. It's just last year was not a good sample size due to just people not playing. And also, of course, last year you didn't have Miles Bridges, who, has his fair share of off-the-court controversy. But he only has a 10 games left of his suspension. He signed like a 1-year deal. He's going to be playing this year. And regardless of what you think of him off the court, he's a great player. He can average 20 points per game. So you add that guy into the mix, that team's doing much better as well. I mean, he's a wing type player, which is the position they need. I mean, they've drafted Brandon Miller for that occasion because you can't always count on Gordon Hayward. He's very injury prone, but when he's not, he could potentially be an all-star level talent. I think that part of his career is over with, but he can still give you like 15, 16 a game. So what is the Hornets roster looking like this year? All right. We got Gordon Hayward. He has this is his last year on his like max contract that he got a couple years ago. So he's getting paid $31 million. I doubt they're going to sign him again. Well, and if they do, it's not going to be anywhere close to a $30 million contract. You still have Terry Rozier for 3 more years. You have Lamelo on a max contract. That's amazing. You have Brandon Miller for the next 5 years. PJ Washington is expected. I would expect the Hornets to give him an extension. He's been playing very well. He wants I think $30 million a year. I mean, pay the man, because no one's coming to the Hornets, and PJ Washington is a great player. Like I said, you got Miles Bridges for this year, Cody Martin, who not as good as his brother Caleb, but he's a great role player. Nick Richards, a decent backup center. Mark Williams, who I would be surprised if he wasn't their starting center. James Bouknight, who he's had a very slow upcoming in his career. I think people would think that his career started off a little faster. He was a lottery pick, but that just hasn't happened yet. It still could. I'm not very high on James Bouknight, but I don't think he's really in their plans very much anymore. You have Kai Jones, who one of the most athletic players in the NBA. He can dunk anything. He can dunk anything. They signed Frank Ntilikina to a 1-year deal just as like a little backup point guard who he's he's a top backup point guard, I would say, especially on defense. They just drafted Nick Smith Jr. as well, another backup guard for them who could turn out to be an amazing six-man for them. You still got you got Amari Bailey, but I doubt he'll play very much. He'll probably play in the G League mostly. JT Thor, Kobe Simmons, Theo Maledon. So I mean, obviously, they traded away Mason Plumlee last year. As we all know, to the Clippers. Kelly Oubre is looking like he's not going to come back. But you look at that roster that I just listed off and the players who are under contract. Everybody on that team is under 30 besides Gordon Hayward. I mean, Terry Rozier is getting up there. But Terry Rozier is not a slouch in the slightest either. I mean, he doesn't look like he's about to be 30 years old. He's very dynamic. And this is still a young team, and I think they're going to be able to compete this year. I mean, if they were just healthy last year, they maybe could have been a play-in team. I don't think they would have been like a top 6 seed in the East. But they had potential, and their guys are so young that every year they're just going to get better and better. And I mean, you're going to get Miles Bridges back, and you're going to get a healthy LaMelo. You're going to get a healthy Mark Williams. You're going to get Brandon Miller, who was the 2 overall pick, who was the 2nd overall pick. And that man can shoot. I mean, he had his flashes in Summer League. He looked well in some games. Other games, he had some troubles, but he's going to be surrounded by much better talent when he's actually in the NBA. So it might be a smoother transition, honestly, from the Summer League to the NBA than it is from like college to Summer League. But I think this team just has so much talent and so many young players that they're going to be competitive. Usually when you say young talent, you think they're going to be raw and they're not going to be able to know how to play in the NBA, but this young talent has 2-3 years of experience already in the NBA. So they're not most of these guys aren't rookies when I say young talent. I mean, you got some rookies like Nick Smith and Jr. and Brandon Miller, but the other guys are young players, but they still have 3, 4 years of experience in the NBA. So they know what to expect and they know how to play. My biggest concern with the Hornets is the coaching. I'm not a big fan of Steve Clifford. He's been a head coach for about 10 years now. and none of those teams have gotten above 50. Have gotten to 50 wins, and he's been with the Charlotte organization for most of his career. I mean, he had a 3-year stint in Orlando where he just he wasn't that great. Every year the team went down in wins when he was coaching. But, they were going through a little bit of a rebuild. They were just still finding out their team. But, I mean, he's never been in really, like, serious consideration for Coach of the Year. I mean, he had a couple years where he was, like, in the top 5. Like, he had, like, 2 years, which doesn't make any sense to me because they were, like, fringe playoff teams those years. But, I mean, they went 27-55. They had the worst offense. Like I said, the injuries probably prohibited him from having the best team he possibly could. So they could be better. Maybe his other 9 years of experience have really led him to found something in teams that they can be really good. But I wouldn't mind if the Hornets got a new coach, someone younger. I mean, they did try that with James Borrego, and that didn't really work out. But, I mean, there's got to be someone better than Steve Clifford. There just has to be. That's like my biggest gripe with the Hornets right now. I mean, they have the talent, they have the team. It's just the coaching, I would say, is probably not their most ideal situation. But yet again, I mean, maybe he found something new. Maybe that's why they signed him back. Hornets fans, maybe you can tell me something that I don't know about Steve Clifford that you like. So my conclusion, this team, they're young, they're raw. They have a little bit of experience, some of the younger players. Lamelo Ball, he is an all-NBA type talent. Brandon Miller, same. Terry Rozier can put up numbers. PJ Washington could maybe be an all-star later in his career. Who knows? Miles Bridges is a stud, even though he does some stuff on the side. I have high hopes for Mark Williams. I think he's going to be a great center. And yeah, I don't think this is a 30th overall offensive team. This team has plenty of offensive talent, I feel like, especially with acquiring Brandon Miller and Nick Smith Jr. They did lose some of their role players in Kelly Oubre and Mason Plumlee. Well, Mason Plumlee last year, midway through the season. But I think this team's going to be finally competitive for the first time in a couple of years. I think they're going to be a tough team to beat on any given night, especially if Lamelo gets going. I think Lamelo's going to have a little bit of a chip on his shoulder because, there's been a lot of controversy about Lamelo, and if he can lead a team, if he's really the player that can lead the Hornets to a win. I mean, people are like, oh, maybe he's more of a Robin than he is a Batman. But I think Lamelo's going to he's the franchise player, and Brandon Miller is the Robin to me. Only thing that I worry about is coaching. I just don't know if Steve Clifford can get the full potential out of the Hornets, but we'll see. I have high hopes for them. They're going to be, even if they're not that good record-wise, they're going to be a very fun team to watch, no doubt.